I used to think I had a perfect life. Everything seemed to fall into place so effortlessly. After graduating from university, I landed my dream job, the one I had always hoped for. Not long after, I met Colton. He was charming, kind, and had a steady job that gave us security. We got married when I was 26, and I felt like the luckiest woman alive. Colton and I shared a wonderful bond. We enjoyed each other's company and created a life filled with laughter and love. For years into our marriage, we felt ready to grow our family, and that's when our daughter, Anna, came into our lives. We lovingly called her Anna, and she brought a new kind of joy we never knew existed. At that point, I decided to leave my job to focus entirely on raising Anna. My name is Chelsea, and I'm 31 years old. Becoming a full-time mom wasn't something I had planned early on, but the moment I held Anna in my arms, I knew I wanted to dedicate myself to her. She's now 3 years old, a little bundle of energy who fills our home with her laughter and innocence. Watching her grow every day makes my heart swell with pride and happiness. Colton adores Anna just as much as I do. On weekends, he takes over and spends the whole day with her, giving me some much-needed rest. Thanks to his unwavering support, I've been able to maintain a healthy balance between motherhood and personal time. Life truly felt like a dream. But as it turns out, dreams can shatter in an instant. Everything changed one weekend. It started like any other Tuesday morning. Colton and I were enjoying breakfast when the doorbell rang unexpectedly. Standing there were Colton's parents, Evan and Anna. I was shocked to see them. They usually visited us only a few times a year, and always with prior notice. But this time, they had shown up unannounced. My relationship with Colton's mother, Anna, had always been strained. She wasn't thrilled about me from the very beginning. I still remember the first time I visited Anna and Evan after Colton proposed. Anna didn't hide her disapproval. She looked me up and down with a critical eye and said, "I'm not sure if you're the right fit to be my son's wife." As if that wasn't enough, she would throw in other hurtful comments like, "She doesn't seem like someone who was raised properly." At first, her words stung, but I quickly learned to stand up for myself. I would respond sharply, saying things like, "Maybe Colton was drawn to someone as optimistic as me because he grew up with such a pessimistic parent." These exchanges didn't sit well with Anna, and they often escalated into arguments. Colton and his father, Evan, hated conflict, so they would always try to diffuse the situation. Still, the tension between Anna and me never truly went away. So you can imagine my surprise when Evan and Anna showed up at our door that weekend. I had no choice but to let them in, though I couldn't help but wonder why they were here. "Evan, Anna," I greeted them, trying to keep my tone polite. "What brings you here today?" Anna scoffed and rolled her eyes. "Are you seriously asking that? We told you we'd be coming over today. Don't you remember?" Her words caught me off guard. I had no idea what she was talking about. Before I could respond, Colton stepped in with an apologetic look. "Hey, Chelsea," he said sheepishly. "I forgot to mention that my parents were coming over today." "Sorry about that." I stared at him, feeling a mix of frustration and disbelief. This wasn't just a minor slip-up. This was the kind of thing that could have given me time to prepare mentally and emotionally. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could Colton forget to tell me something this important? My mind raced as I stood in the kitchen, quickly brewing tea for everyone. Colton has always been a bit forgetful, but this was on another level. Carrying the tea tray into the living room, I plastered on a polite smile. "So, Evan and Anna, what brings you here today?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. Anna gave me a look that could cut glass. "What? Colton didn't tell you?" I spoke to him about this already. "Honestly, Chelsea, are you two having trouble communicating?" Her words felt like a slap. It wasn't her place to say such things, but I held my tongue. Instead, I turned to Colton, hoping he'd step in and clarify. He looked visibly uncomfortable, shifting in his seat before finally speaking. "Actually," he began hesitantly, "I've been meaning to talk to you about this, Chelsea. My parents and I have discussed it and we've decided we're going to move in with them." My jaw dropped. "What?" Colton avoided my gaze. You remember my dad broke his leg recently, right? Ever since then, I've been really worried about him. Plus, my parents are in their 70s now, and I think it's best for us to move in with them so we can take care of them. I blinked, trying to process what he was saying. Wait a minute. Are you saying you've already agreed to move in with your parents? Without even discussing it with me? Colton nodded hesitantly.
Yes.
I don't think it's a bad idea. I felt a wave of disbelief and frustration wash over me. How could he think it was okay to make such a major decision without even consulting me? This wasn't just about him, it was about our family, our home, and our lives. Anna, of course, couldn't resist chiming in. Chelsea, don't tell me you're opposing this idea. We didn't come here to hear your opinion anyway. What matters is what Colton decides. Her words lit a fire in me. Taking a deep breath, I replied firmly, this is an important decision for a husband and wife to make together. Let me discuss this with Colton, and we'll come to a decision. Anna's eyes narrowed as if she couldn't believe my audacity. With an irritated huff, she stood up.
Fine.
But I hope you're not too sassy about this, Chelsea. She and Evan left shortly after, leaving behind an air of tension that clung to the room like a storm cloud. As soon as the door closed, I turned to Colton. Why didn't you say anything about this to me? I demanded. I'm sorry, he stammered, looking genuinely remorseful. Colton, this isn't a minor decision. Moving in with your parents affects both of us. You should have talked to me first. I was just worried about my dad, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. And being worried about your dad doesn't give you the right to make a decision like this without me, I shot back. We're a team, Colton. Important things like this need to be discussed together. You're right, he said, nodding. I'm sorry, Chelsea. I'll make sure to talk to you first in the future. I sighed, still feeling the weight of the conversation. So, what do you want to know? How I feel about moving in with your parents? He hesitated, then nodded.
Yes.
What do you think? Honestly, I said, crossing my arms. I don't want to live with your parents. You know how your mom and I don't get along. Living under the same roof would be a disaster. I figured you'd say that, he murmured, looking down. But is there any way you'd reconsider? I'll do anything. I studied him carefully. He seemed sincere, but I wasn't going to agree without conditions. Fine, I said finally. If we move in, you have to protect me from your mom. If she says anything mean to me or picks on me, you need to stand up for me. No more letting her get away with it. Colton's eyes widened. What? Protect you? From my mom? Yes, Colton, I said firmly. And let me be very clear. If you can't do this, if you can't promise to stand up for me when she crosses the line, then I'll leave. I'll take Anna and go back to my parents' house. And if it comes to that, we might as well get a divorce. Divorce? His voice rose in disbelief. Isn't that a bit extreme? No, it's not, I said, my tone unwavering. That's how serious I am about this. I refuse to live in a toxic environment where I'm disrespected. If you can't promise to protect me, then there's no point in us continuing this conversation. Colton looked at me, a mix of guilt and determination in his eyes. Okay, he said finally. I promise. I'll protect you from my mom, no matter what. Just don't ever say you'll leave me again. I'll do whatever it takes to make this work. For the first time that day, I felt a flicker of hope. Good, I said softly. Then we'll try. But you have to mean it, Colton. No half measures. I mean it, he said, taking my hand. I'll protect you, Chelsea. Always. As I looked into his eyes, I wanted to believe him. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning of a very long road. After much deliberation, I decided to agree to move in with Colton's parents for now. But I made it crystal clear to myself, if Colton failed to keep his promise to stand up for me, I wouldn't hesitate to move out, no matter what. This arrangement wasn't permanent, and I was determined to protect my peace. A few weeks later, we packed our belongings and moved into Evan and Anna's house. From the moment we arrived, Anna made it clear that living under the same roof wasn't going to be easy. As soon as she opened the door, she greeted us with a cold, sarcastic smile. Oh, you're finally here, she said, her voice dripping with insincerity. Well, Please don't cause us any trouble while you're here. I felt my temper flare but quickly nudged Colton, who stood beside me. He glanced at me, then at his mother, looking nervous but resolute. Mom, he said firmly, you're the one who asked us to move in and suggested this arrangement. So, I think it's only fair that you treat us with respect. And, of course, not cause us any trouble either. Anna blinked, surprised by Colton's uncharacteristic response. But she quickly recovered, plastering a smile on her face. Well, yes, she said with a dismissive wave.
Come on in.
I'll make some tea. I couldn't help but feel a small spark of hope. Colton had actually stood up for me, even in front of his mother. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Maybe, just maybe, I could manage living here if he kept his promise. After settling our luggage in our assigned room, we joined Evan and Anna in the living room for tea. As we sipped, the front door suddenly opened, and I heard footsteps approaching. I turned toward the doorway, curious to see who it was. I'm home, a cheerful voice called out. Standing there was Sophie, my sister-in-law. Oh, are Colton and his family visiting today? She asked, glancing at Anna. Anna raised an eyebrow. I told you yesterday that they were moving in, she said. Sophie's casual demeanor confused me. Sophie, I said cautiously, are you living here now? Sophie beamed at me as if the answer should have been obvious. Of course. Didn't Colton tell you? I've been back living here for 4 months now. I froze, stunned. Colton had never mentioned this to me. I turned to him, glaring. He looked sheepish, scratching the back of his neck. Oh, I forgot to tell you, he mumbled, avoiding my gaze. My patience was already wearing thin. This was the first major oversight since we moved in, and I quietly noted it as strike one. Well, Sophie said with a laugh, now we're one big, happy family. I forced a smile. Oh, great, I muttered, though the words felt hollow. That night, once we were alone in our room, I let Colton have it. You didn't think this was important enough to tell me? I asked, my voice sharp. I'm sorry, he said, looking genuinely remorseful. I didn't mean to keep it from you. I sighed heavily, knowing this was just the beginning of what would undoubtedly be a challenging time. Life at Anna's house. It didn't take long for things to unravel. As expected, Anna wasted no time making my life difficult. One morning, as I was tidying up our room, she appeared in the doorway with a sour expression. Chelsea, she snapped, why aren't you cleaning the rest of the house? I looked up, confused. What do you mean? I've already cleaned our room. Well, you haven't cleaned my room or Sophie's room, she said, crossing her arms. And the lawn needs mowing, too. I stared at her, dumbfounded. Why would I need to clean your room or Sophie's? And mowing the lawn? That's not my responsibility. Anna's eyes narrowed. Are you talking back to me? You should be grateful we're letting you stay here. Her words hit a nerve. We're living here because Colton and I are worried about Evan, I said firmly. You're the one who invited us to move in. Before Anna could respond, Sophie waltzed into the room, clearly taking her mother's side. What's going on here? She asked, glancing between us. Chelsea is refusing to help with the housework, Anna said dramatically, as if I had committed some great crime. Sophie shook her head, her tone dripping with disdain. Chelsea, are you seriously arguing with my mother about something as simple as cleaning? It just sounds like you're trying to avoid your responsibilities. I couldn't believe what I was hearing.
What?
That's ridiculous. I shot back. To me, it just seems like you want to slack off and do nothing, Sophie said, crossing her arms. Fuming, I finally snapped. Fine, I said angrily. I'll clean everything, your room, Anna's room, the whole house. But don't expect me to stay silent about this treatment forever. As I stormed off to start cleaning, I made a silent vow to myself. If Colton didn't step up and keep his promise, this would be strike 2. And after strike 3, I was out of here for good. Even though it was a scorching hot day, I mowed the lawn all by myself. On top of that, I was doing every household chore Anna and Sophie assigned to me. While I was busy working, they were in the living room playing with my daughter, Anna. It annoyed me so much that I wanted to shout at them, "Don't touch my daughter with your filthy hands." When Colton came home from work, I told him everything. I asked him to speak to them during dinner, hoping he'd finally stand up for me. Later, as we all sat at the dinner table, Sophie and Anna started their usual complaints about me. "What is this dish? It's so bland," Sophie said, grimacing at her plate. "I don't like this at all. I don't think I can even finish it." Anna chimed in. "How can someone so bad at cooking be a housewife? This is just pathetic." I glanced at Colton, waiting for him to respond. He put down his knife and fork, finally opening his mouth to speak. "Mom, Sophie," he said, trying to stay calm, "don't complain about the food. Chelsea worked hard to make this meal for you. Please appreciate it." Sophie rolled her eyes and sneered. "Colton, are you seriously defending her? Where's your dignity as a husband? Do you actually think this food is good?" Colton hesitated for a moment before stammering, I love Chelsea's cooking. It's delicious." But it was clear that Sophie had the upper hand in the argument. Colton, as usual, couldn't stand up to her or Anna. Watching him sit there, unsure of what to say or do, made my heart sink. I couldn't believe how unreliable my husband was. In my mind, this was Colton's second strike. From that day on, the bullying from Anna and Sophie only got worse. They made me do every possible chore around the house and sent me on endless errands. If I ever refused even slightly, they would start complaining. Anna didn't hold back her opinions, either. "You're the wife in this family," she said one day. "It's only natural for you to do all the work. You should respect me as the head of the household and do as I say." Sophie backed her up without missing a beat. "That's right. Chelsea, you're part of this family now. You're supposed to follow what we say. Stop acting like you're above us." I stared at them in disbelief. Their behavior was beyond unreasonable. I couldn't imagine any other in-laws behaving this way. It was as if they thought I was their servant. At that point, I started thinking seriously about how I could eventually leave this house. I couldn't live like this forever. Then one day, I received a call from my mother. She told me that my father had suffered a stroke and had been taken to the hospital. Thankfully, it wasn't life-threatening, but he had to be hospitalized for a while. Hearing the news, I quickly packed my bags to visit him. As I was gathering my things, Anna walked into the room and asked, "Chelsea, what are you doing?" I looked at her and replied, "I'm sorry, Anna. My mom just called me and told me that my dad had a stroke. He's in the hospital, and I need to go see him." "I'm going to visit him at the hospital," I said firmly. Anna's response left me speechless. "Who said you can leave this house?" she snapped. "This is your home, and you have no other place to go." "What?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Stop packing and get back to the chores," she ordered. That was the last straw for me. I couldn't take it anymore. If I stayed in this house any longer, I felt like I'd lose my mind. Ignoring her completely, I grabbed my bag and left. I went straight to the hospital to see my father. He looked weak, but thankfully, his condition wasn't serious. I decided to stay at my parents' house for a few days to help my mother with housework and to keep her company. During my time there, Anna and Sophie didn't leave me alone. They bombarded me with calls and horrible messages like, "What's wrong with you? You're Colton's wife. Stop avoiding your duties and come back home right now." Their audacity was unbelievable. It was clear they had lost their minds. By this point, I had already started thinking seriously about divorcing Colton and leaving that toxic house for good. But the more I thought about Anna and Sophie's behavior, the angrier I got. That's when I decided I needed revenge. I knew revenge would take time and planning, so even though I hated the idea, I returned to Anna's house. From the moment I stepped back inside, Anna and Sophie resumed their nonsense, constantly complaining about me and trying to boss me around. Half a year later, about 7 months passed, and then one evening at dinner, Anna shared some news excitedly.
"She said yes."
Sophie beamed. "I'll bring him over for lunch next time." I froze for a moment, then felt a spark of joy inside. This was it. The perfect chance for revenge had finally come. I couldn't help but smile to myself. Sophie noticed and said, "Oh, Chelsea, you're happy for me too." I nodded politely, hiding my true intentions. 2 weeks later, Sophie brought her fiancé, Matt, to the house. He seemed like a decent man, well-dressed, polite, and clearly successful. Sophie introduced him to everyone with pride, and it was obvious that she thought she had hit the jackpot. Matt worked for a big company and had a high income. He seemed far too good for someone like Sophie. Even Anna, who always had something to criticize, seemed completely satisfied with him. "You have all my blessings," Anna said with a wide smile. "Please take good care of Sophie." I saw my opportunity and seized it. After serving tea to everyone, I approached Matt and started a conversation. "So, Matt," I said casually, "are you planning to live with your parents after you get married?" Matt looked surprised.
What?
"No, I haven't thought about that yet. Oh, but I heard that in this family it's a rule. If your parents are over 70, you have to live with them," I said innocently. "I just assumed you'd either live with your parents or move in here with us." Matt frowned. "No, there's no such rule in my family." "Oh, I see," I replied with a smile. "Well, there are plenty of other rules in this house. For example, I heard that a wife has to obey everything her in-laws say to show gratitude to them," I said calmly. "And also, you're not allowed to return to your own home because this house becomes your home. When my father had a stroke, they tried to stop me from visiting him in the hospital. Instead, they wanted me to stay and do their chores." Matt's face darkened as he listened to my words. "Is what Chelsea is saying true?" he asked Sophie, his voice filled with doubt. Sophie shook her head quickly.
No.
"That can't be true. Chelsea is just jealous because you're better than Colton. She's making up lies to ruin things for me." I smiled calmly. "I'm not jealous, Sophie. I'm just letting Matt know what it's like to marry into this family. I'm giving him advice so he doesn't end up in a situation where he regrets it, or worse, ends up divorced for no reason." With that, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my voice recorder. I pressed play, and the room filled with recordings of Sophie and Anna bullying me. Every insult, every unreasonable demand, it was all there. As the recordings played, Sophie and Anna's faces turned pale. They looked like they wanted to sink into the floor. When the recording finished, Matt stood up abruptly. His expression was cold and firm. "I'm sorry, but this wedding is off," he said, looking directly at Sophie. "This is goodbye." Without waiting for a response, he walked out of the house. Sophie and Anna were stunned. They sat there in silence before bursting into tears. Watching them cry felt like sweet justice. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of relief. I didn't waste any time after that. I packed my belongings, took Anna in my arms, and left that house for good. I left my signed divorce papers on the table for Colton to find. A few hours later, Colton called me. He sounded desperate, but I didn't hold back. I told him how unreliable he had been as a husband and how he had failed to protect me when I needed him the most. A couple of days later, Colton informed me that he had signed the divorce papers and sent them back to me. I was furious. How could he give up so easily? He didn't even fight for me or try to fix things. But then again, he had never been a strong or dependable partner. Looking back, divorcing him was the best decision I could have made. Life after leaving. According to a neighbor I was close to, Colton and Sophie are still living at Anna's house like freeloaders. Neither of them does any housework, so Anna has to handle all the chores on her own now. As for Sophie, I heard that she was so devastated after her engagement was called off that she quit her job. She's living poorly now, relying on her father's pension to get by. Colton, on the other hand, spends all his money on his hobbies. He doesn't contribute a single penny to the household. It's a mess, but honestly, it's no longer my problem. The only person I feel sorry for is Evan. He doesn't deserve to be stuck with such a lazy, toxic family. Meanwhile, my life has taken a positive turn. I'm focusing on rebuilding my life and giving Anna the happy, peaceful home she deserves. I'm back to working hard at my job, and my parents are helping take care of my daughter at home. She's growing up so quickly, and lately, she's been excitedly telling me all about what happens at her kindergarten. Seeing her so cheerful makes me feel so happy, and it motivates me to keep working hard for her. Thank you for watching until the end. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. See you in the next one.